All right, let's get reaction to that story now. Maverick citizen editor Mark Heywood, who has written extensively on the crime prevention wardens, also known as Panyaza, joining us for that. Good to have you, Mark, and thank you very much for coming on. The much sought after authorization after the fact seemed to have now been given by the Department of Justice. That particular statement, a little bit cryptic. Decipher for us what actually has happened here.
Good evening and thanks for having me. Yes, as you say, today the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development has issued this statement. Basically, they have granted powers to the Gauteng Crime Prevention wardens under the Criminal Procedure Act. And although they say that they're putting the Panyaza under the management of the traffic department or the traffic police, effectively what has happened is that they have been given full policing powers. I've looked at the 2011 Government Gazette, which the statement refers to, and that Government Gazette says that they will be given all powers under the Criminal Procedures Act, which means that the Gauteng Crime Prevention wardens will have very, very extensive powers as soon as a new Government Gazette is published.
So, I mean, the department seemingly saying that under this section, it gives them the authority to confer peace officer status to any person by their office. Any person, does that mean even people who are not necessarily trained in a particular area or designated class of offenses can be just given that status?
No, I don't think it means any person. The person must have undergone training, and in this instance, the crime prevention wardens have undergone training. We know that, but we also know that the training was very ad hoc, that it was insufficient, that it focused heavily on physical exercises and drilling, and that very little of the training equips these men and women with actual policing skills, and yet they have been given full policing powers. And I think that that is the problem. You know, they were trained for 3 months at a resort just outside Pretoria by traffic officers, not by members of the SAPS, and by retired officers from the Department of Correctional Services. So this is the worry, and I think what should be of concern is that the Minister of Justice has now granted these powers without really any substantial qualification. Although they say that they will be put under the management of the traffic department, the Gazette itself makes it clear that there's no formal differentiation.
Yeah. Whose department will they be falling under? Because by all accounts right now, their budget is probably coming directly from the Premier's office.
So the department they will fall under will be the Department of Community Safety. That is the department that they are currently accountable to the extent that they are accountable at all, and that will continue to be the case. Their budget comes out of the Department of Community Safety. That department's budget was increased by 1.5 billion rand this year to make the appointment, training, equipping with BMWs of the crime prevention wardens possible. So that status quo of the informal crime prevention wardens continues with the formalization that is now been announced today.
Yeah. And what does that in essence mean, this particular formalization? Because up until this point, they are receiving a stipend, if I am correct, of about 4,000 rands. So does their ranking now as traffic officers mean that their scope and remuneration is also going to change?
Well, you know, their scope obviously changes because they have been given all of these formal powers. I think there are 17 different powers that are listed in the Criminal Procedures Act. Those include powers of arrest, those include powers to use firearms, they include powers to arrest and identify illegal immigrants and suspect and criminal suspects. They're very, very extensive powers. we'll have to wait and see what the traffic department says as to their exact scope of practice. I guess it's up to the traffic department to decide which, if all or not, of those 17 powers are granted. That we will have to see. As far as remuneration in terms of service, at the moment, they are paid 6,000 Rand a month, as I understand it. They are on 1-year contracts. Again, whether that will change and whether they will be upgraded to the pay and terms and conditions of formal employees, I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it seems as if they're being given the full powers of formal employees, so you would expect that perhaps that would be the case. But I can't give you a yes or no on that.
So your initial concern, of course, was also around the fact that they could be committing some offences, they could be using excessive force in some instances, and there is no regulatory body that they report to that could hold them accountable. Does this resolve that question?
No, it doesn't. It makes that question more relevant, and those concerns remain. Just today, by pure coincidence, there's a report in News 24 of a police officer, off-duty police officer, who was assaulted by crime prevention wardens in Tembisa. He was standing outside of his house drinking a beer. Crime prevention wardens pitched up, told him he was illegal, beat him over the head with a baton, injured him so he had to go to hospital. This is a police officer, and he has laid a charge. He's laid charges, and that has been confirmed by the police. And I have heard other stories since I started investigating and reporting this of similar misconduct. So I guess Panyaza Lesufi and the Gauteng Crime Prevention, Community Safety Department have to do some very, very serious work on policing their new police force and making sure that they abide by proper, ethical, lawful standards of conduct. That is going to be one of the challenges. One just hopes that happens, but there's very lax controls at the moment, and there's I'm afraid, no reason to believe that there is going to be an improvement.
So then the other question, of course, is the question of firearms. I think that's what the Premier was also saying. Well, get these people authorized as quickly as possible so they can begin to be given firearms and protect the province. Does this resolve that question, or are there other requirements before those firearms can certainly be released to the crime prevention wardens?
Well, it resolves the problem to the extent that some of these men and women will now be equipped with firearms and will be trained with firearms. That will be the requirement, that they are trained. But again, there's training and there's training, and police training in use of firearms isn't just how to pull a trigger and use a gun. I would believe it's much more extensive than that, about when and how you use firearms in a public disorder or a criminal situation. And that fact alone should be cause for great concern. Two concerns. One is that we know a lot of firearms are stolen from the police, and firearms cause police to be targets of criminals. And the second is that firearms in the wrong hands can be the basis for abuses of power. So again, it goes back simply to this question of how well trained, what is the policy framework, what is the discipline and accountability framework, what is the framework for complaints. And if you try to tick all of those boxes, you find it very, very difficult to put ticks against those boxes.
Mark Heywood, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Mark Heywood, the editor of the Maverick Citizen Day. He's been writing extensively about the crime prevention wardens, also known as Panyaza, who, in order for them, of course, to be given their peace officer status, have now been conferred powers similar to that of the Gauteng provincial traffic officers.